Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And I do feel like it's finally Thursday. These last couple of weeks I've been saying, well, on Tuesdays, I'm like, oh, Thursday. I guess I just always feel like that's what we always say. So it is finally Thursday and we are excited. Tomorrow's Friday and then the weekend. And I am hoping to do a little bit of fishing. Well, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see how early you get out of work. Today you were almost an hour late.
But I think like our weather this weekend is kind of a repeat of the last few weekends in a row. So Saturday, it's been like not terrible weather, but Sunday I think is going to be rainy and maybe pretty yucky again. So, I mean, we're waiting for this fall pattern to set up, but we were actually just talking Tuesday with Ryan Salemi, and he was saying even he feels like it's more like the beginning or mid-October as compared to November when it comes to fishing. So I would say that is what we were experiencing as well. Even as far as water temperatures, would you say?
Yeah, I think Ryan was absolutely correct on that. I would even venture to guess most of Minnesota and Michigan can join in with us saying like the water temps are that early fall instead of the late fall. And we're just waiting. We're just like sitting in limbo here, like waiting for winter to come.
But it's one of those things where I think people are really pushing that fall bite. You know, people fish their memories, if that's a way to put that, right? And so people are expecting, fish to be schooled up over deep or, whatever that is. And maybe they're not quite there yet. So, we talked this past week about a few different things to do. Ryan gave us kind of a few different options, but I think what we have been doing that's been working is fishing transitions. So when we think about where fish were, I guess, kind of in summer, those summer patterns, and where they're going to be in winter, those fish travel between those areas. And I guess that sounds obvious, right? But I think people forget to find those points between those spots, right? Because it's maybe where you're not fishing the rest of the year. And you said something interesting on Tuesday. You're like, oh, it's almost like spring. And I was like, no. Like if you saw my face during that podcast, like it might have been like, no. But what you continued on to say is that, because that is the other point where fish are transitioning, from winter into summer, into that spring shallow. So, that sounds obvious again, those fish are transitioning like that, but it's easy to follow them through that transition, that mid-zone water when you think of it that way. So,
yeah. And it's also a difficult pattern to fish because it's, you just kind of have to rely on instinct more than your electronics, because like Ryan was saying, you're going to find little like roamers. You're not going to find big piles of fish schooled up, and they're not necessarily like all of them are not necessarily way up shallow. You can't really cast up into that structure, or there may not be any structure there, whether maybe your lake is most of the structure is weeds. If that's gone by this point, this can be a tough time of year, but just focus on those first edges. And if you see, if you do have electronics in the boat, if you see the bait fish, or, if you see bugs in the water or bugs on your electronics, just stop, cast around for a bit and just kind of mark that depth in your memory, because then you can go around the whole lake and kind of just find those little spots like that.
You are making an interesting point, though, because whether you are on the bite or not, because people I seem to be going either way at this point in the year. But one of the things that you should be doing is looking out for ice season, some of that prep work. And so you were talking about, weeds and if they're there or not. But, that's not just for fishing right now, because if you can keep track of where there's weeds still living come ice fishing, that's going to be a great place to set up, especially in that early season. So keep track of what weeds are where. But then also, like we're talking, as you're fishing these transitions, keep track of, are there cribs? Is there brush in that mid depth? If you can find something, a down tree in 10 to 12 feet right now. Honestly, that's like the kind of thing that I'm looking for, right? So keep track of where all these different things are, because all of a sudden we will get to ice season and those will be really, really good starting points. The other thing that I'm doing right now, gosh, I feel like this is a secret of mine. Like I shouldn't tell people, but it's not a secret at all. And I hope that everybody does it. But, especially if you are the kind of person that still has your boat out, keep track of what the contours look like just off of the boat landing. Okay, here's why I say that. So often people will get in their boat and, they're so excited to go fishing that they go out and they go fishing. And that is cool. I feel like everybody's spot is like across the lake and that's awesome, right? But when we are talking ice fishing, when we are talking first ice, sometimes what we need to think about are those spots that we can get to, right? It's not always safe to push the limits or whatever, right? Or sometimes there just isn't ice in places. And so keep track near those launches. Are there deep holes? Are there deep spots? Is there a basin just off of that landing, right? Because so often people are going to pass that by. But that might be some of those places that fish are setting up. So, that's always a fun thing to check out. And I always like having a spot. Well, I do. I always like having a spot where you can fish like 10 feet off the landing. And it's like everyone is like walking like clear past you. And you're like setting hooks right there. And nobody believes it. That's how we find this though, is this part of the season. You just got to keep your eye out. The other thing that I guess really is going to help in this season and moving towards ice season is having a good array of baits. So we are plastics fishermen. And so I'm watching Josh like switch our screens here. We had planned for tonight, BassReaper Bait Company. I always want to call them BassReaper Bait Tackle Company. I don't know if they used to be that or not, but I always want to call them that. But the cool thing is they do have baits. They do have tackle. They had signed up to be here with us this evening, and actually they may still be kind of I'll call them a secret guest. It's not a secret because obviously we're posting about it, but it turns out that they ended up in a situation where they're in some transit. So if we can connect with them with a good signal coming up here, then we are going to be talking about some of those baits. And either way, we're going to post that website so everyone can check that out. Because when we are here these Tuesdays and Thursdays, that's what we're doing, is talking to the vendors that are coming to the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo. I'm pointing way down there. It's way farther away than I thought, but that little emblem in that corner is really the whole event that's coming in December. We've spent a lot of time talking about that. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to each of these different podcasts or video casts. But also go and check out some of these different vendors as we post about them. So did I just see you post the link?
Yep.
Awesome. So when we are, I guess, looking back at some of this fishing talk, we do have a few questions along the way. So we always love that. Oh, Eric, that's not really a question, but I guess just chiming in, Josh pointed it out to me. I was like, oh, a question. You're saying that when a launch has boats power loading, 15 to 20 feet is almost a guarantee for a deep hole. That's actually a really interesting point. And as I was saying that, I was wondering about that. Is a power loading hole deep enough to ice fish in? Like, absolutely. Will it hold fish? Maybe, right? I guess it depends on your lake. If you have a lake where there's a ton of good, I don't know, down trees or holes or rock piles or things, like maybe they won't care about the power loading hole. But if you have a lake where there's like Dead Sea, like you can't find a crib anywhere, there's no alive weeds anywhere, there's no down trees, there's no anything, and just it feels like it's all the same depth everywhere. We all have one of those lakes, right? I'm just saying though, but that's what happens is when you have a lake that is so consistent, so even, any of those little things will hold fish. Like one little boulder is enough, that fish will sit on them. So when you have something like a power loading hole and all of a sudden it's a really deep spot, yeah, I bet that would work. Now it has me thinking about the lakes differently. That's a good. But that is actually an interesting point, because the places that we are fishing now are some of the places that we hit early ice, right? Because if I can keep track of the fish a little bit, oh no, that they're over here, over there, right? I mean, I know that's so generic, but at least it gives you that starting point, because there's nothing worse than getting to the water and being like, what now? I mean, I think a lot of people have had that happen to them. You can be like a really great angler, right? You could be a tournament fisherman, but somebody is that you get there 5 minutes late, you get stuck by a red light, a train, something. You have to wait for me to get out the door, right? But then you get to the lake, somebody's in your spot. We talk all the time about not having spots, right? Like fish where the fish are, find where they're relating to, right? Find that area. But if you come with that plan and you're going to do that and somebody's already there, you got to have a different plan.
Yeah.
Cool. So looking back at the comments, we have a whole bunch of people checking in, and that is great. We always love to hear from people, and we hope that not only do we hear from you now, but see you at the expo as well. So if you're planning on coming, let us know that, because we're interested. The other thing that reminds me is we were talking to Don Kirby on one of these episodes, and we had asked him, we put him on the spot, so it didn't happen in that moment. I get it. But we said, can we give out some tickets? And he didn't say no.
Yeah.
We are like 1 month almost out from the expo. And I'm wondering, do you think we can give out tickets every show from here to the expo? Not from here. It's not happening today. But if you guys are interested in tickets, pop that in the comments. Let us know.
Maybe we'll try and start that next week. Who do we got next week? Let's look at this. We can start it with Lakewood Products. We'll get a hold of Don. We'll have Emily twist his arm. She's the strong.
I already called Don once tonight.
But we'll try that. And if you guys tune in on the 12th for Lakewood Products, make sure you get that event, that live stream event in your calendar.
Lakewood is going to be really fun though, because they have
try and give away
open
some
water.
tickets.
They have ice.
They have firearms.
They even have some cases, for firearms and bows and arrows. So right now there's a lot of different seasons going on. We're talking about open water transitioning to ice, but there's hunting seasons of actually all kinds going on right now, depending on where you are or like what you have tags for. So I also know there's a bunch of people that are traveling. And so that's going to be a really fun thing. If you are traveling for a hunt coming up, Lakewood is the type of case that is easy to travel with. So love talking to them. Now you changed the screen and I can't see who else. Lakewood and Bob Allen books next Thursday. So Bob Allen is one of our favorite artists, authors. He's not actually the artist, I don't think. No. The author of the book, though. And he does have really great artists because the pictures are super fun, super whimsical. But it is books for kids, for families, about fishing. So
they're great coffee table books, honestly.
Josh just wants to have them for her house.
I just want
it's like adorable, Oh my goodness.
Okay, so a couple things in the comments. Rick, we are not going to be able to hit the Ice Institute this weekend.
Oh, and unfortunately, that's crazy, we normally do.
Unfortunately, our tour this year is a little bit shortened. Emily just started a new job, and so she's been working hard at doing a good job over there. So, we're going to be a little short this year. Our only 2 stops this season are going to be St. Paul and the Oshkosh show. And then we'll also be in Madison for the spring show, but we don't want to talk about spring yet. So, Quickly, my new thoughts on the Psycho Shad. Looks cool. I don't know. I mean, it reminds me of Chubby Darter almost. It's kind of, it'll catch fish. Yeah. Good question, Ryan. Oh man, we got a bunch of questions.
No, that's great. But one of them that is leading okay, so let's hang tight, people at home. We love that you're here and keep asking questions. But actually we have a check-in from BassReaper Bait Company. So let's get to them. And I think that connects also to Matthew's question. So hang tight and we will answer that in a minute. But let's bring them into the show. Hello, and thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, hi. Sorry I'm late. I forgot about it, but I got held up yesterday. I'm not even home yet. I'm en route to get home, so I had to stop. I'm on an exit ramp right now. So,
well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you bet.
So we are here talking about ice fishing and the transition from open water to ice. And people are very excited about plastics, and you seem like the kind of person to talk to about this. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your bait company?
Yeah, so we're family owned and operated. Obviously, we've talked to you before in the past at Madison and stuff. We started out in 2019. We went into ice plastics in 2020. We don't promote it a whole lot. It seems to do pretty good. We did well at the ice show last year. We have 4 different bait styles, multiple different colors. So, we have tungsten ice jigs as well. Obviously, we import those. But yeah, it does pretty well. And we had a successful show last year.
That is really cool. I always love when you have baits that you don't have to like put away. And I think that there's so much in the ice fishing world that transitions panfish wise. And I know you called, BassReaper Bait, but that doesn't mean that you have stuff just for bass.
Yeah, exactly. I know the name's confusing to a lot of people, and it doesn't matter. I mean, we have our ice series, so it's labeled differently. It still says Bass Review. That's just the name of the company. Um, so we do have our ice series plastics. It's obviously a totally different line. We have baits that catch walleye as well. So it doesn't matter. I mean, and all of our ice plastics, it's just a microplastic. They're really small, but we use them all summer long too, and we catch fish all summer long on them.
So for somebody who's maybe just beginning to get into plastics, do you have any tips for them? Does this need to be tipped with live bait? Tell us a little bit about that.
No, it doesn't actually. The plastics are they're designed to mimic insects and bait fish and things like that. And obviously in the wintertime you want to downsize because the fish are obviously a little more lethargic because they're cold. They don't move as fast. So you want something that's just kind of subtle. But the plastics you don't need to tip them with live bait. You got just enough little action on the tails of our baits and stuff that the fish they come to it. Anything that's in the water to the fish is food until they put it in their mouth to find out if it is or it isn't. If they're like 2-year-olds, and they just think everything is food, and they put it in their mouth. And like I said, you got to downsize a little in wintertime because it's cold. The fish aren't as active, things like that. So no, you don't need to tip them. We do put a little scent on our plastics. It's not a lot, but it's a little, and it just some people think it helps, some don't. I'm not a firm believer in scent myself, but that's just my personal preference or opinion.
Well, and that's also really great stuff leading into Matthew's other question about then different kinds of jigging cadence. And so when you're talking about, sizing down for winter and stuff like that, I think jig cadence has a lot to do with that presentation as well. Do you agree with that?
Sure. And yeah, you always got to try and find out what's a fish. Sometimes you just got to set it down there and just leave it sit. And maybe you might only jig it maybe once every 5 minutes. So you got, having a camera, underwater camera kind of helps you learn that. But yeah, you just got to experiment with that part of it. The cadence is always a crucial part of it. Your depth is a crucial part. Sometimes the fish are a little further up off the bottom, so you gotta raise your bait up a little bit, and yeah, you don't want a really fast action to it, but just enough to let them know that it's might be alive.
Well, and so then again, keep playing with that. So even if you just have something simple like a Vexlar, not even the newest top of the line one, you can tell how those fish are responding to your baits. I mean, unless you never make a mark, maybe that it's time to move, right? But you can tell if you're jigging a lot and they show up and you stop and they go away. That says something, right? Keep up that jigging. Or maybe sometimes fish like that action, you can call them in, but they need kind of a slower bait to bite on. And so I guess one of the things is getting to know your electronics well enough in order to decide what those fish are reacting to. Because as far as plastics, I guess the only other thing that we haven't talked about is if you find a bait that you're pretty confident in, maybe a bug, maybe a minnow, whatever that is for your lake, find that forage and then have a few different colors in it. So I know that sounds a little bit overwhelming as far as plastics, right? But have something dark, have something light, have something bright is kind of my thought pattern, because then what you're going to want to do is cycle a little bit through those colors, see what is going to get that bite. Sometimes the brightness of the day is going to affect that. Sometimes fish just always bite on the same thing, but get to know your lake and what those fish react to. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Color helps a lot, but you don't have to get too crazy with colors. You can, like you said, just go with some natural colors, go with some darker colors for stained water, and keep it simple, especially if you're just starting out. You don't need to overwhelm yourself with a multitude of different colors. I think just trying, like you said, know your body. If it's clear water, you don't want something that's going to be totally obnoxious, but you want something that's going to be kind of natural in clear water. And in darker stained water, now you can play with colors a little bit more because you want them to react to the vibration that you're causing with jigging, more so than you are color to try and attract them into you.
That's actually a really great point, and something that we've talked about before. And I feel like we talk about this more and more now. This used to be one of my other secrets. I'm giving away all my secrets in this
All
episode.
your secrets.
But I think, one of the things I like to do is, everyone goes around drilling a grid of holes and everything. But if you can find a spot where the fish are kind of like hiding out, kind of biting, if you can drill 2 holes next to each other, have one bait that is, a bigger jigging something, if you like hard baits, if you like a bigger plastic, if you like whatever it is, and then have one hole, and then I always use it for like a little tiny tungsten minnow or bug, something very, very small. And honestly, the small one I usually just let be a dead stick, and I spend my time like jigging on that bigger rod, pull fish in if you can. Hopefully some of those bigger fish, right, get excited and see it and come in. But so often in winter, they don't actually want to bite that big bait, and they actually end up biting the small dead stick instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Always downsize it. If you're jigging a 4mm or 5mm tungsten jig and they're not biting it, you might have to go down to a 3mm, which is really small, but sometimes that's all it is that little difference, and it'll get them to react and bite. And you got to think like us, we don't always want a 4-course meal, right? We don't always want to go to the buffet, but we might be watching a movie late at night. We might just want a handful of popcorn. So that smaller jig is their handful of popcorn and that little late night snack. So you got to kind of think of it as that aspect as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so now I'm sitting here thinking this next question, but this might be a hard question, so I don't mean to do that to you. But as far as, if people are getting into plastics, and then we keep talking about, oh, minnow or a bug bait, this or that, and we kind of toss these terms around kind of generically, like, oh, just figure it out. Do you have any tips to starting to figure that out? Do you normally start with a buggier bait or something more like a minnow?
I guess the only thing I could say there is, and this is something I've read, so I haven't tested the theory of it or not. But if you know your bottom composition, is it sand? Is it gravel? Is it muck? If it's sand and gravel, you might want to start with like a minnow style bait, because minnows and stuff are going to hang out around that. If you're on like muck or dirt, more right on the edge of a grass line, maybe you want to start it with an insect style bait, like a grub or a worm style. That's an article I read some years back, and it kind of made sense to me. So I would take that approach. Try and figure out what your bottom composition is.
Okay, actually, I'm super glad that you brought that up, because it just made me realize something that I do is I'm one of those people that I'm convinced that a bloodworm style bait should work like always, everywhere, like all the time. I don't know why I feel like that. I don't know. I guess now I'm embarrassed admitting that. It seems silly, but I think especially in winter, like that happens to me, is I'm convinced every body of water bloodworms are going to work here. But like you're saying, it's more about the conditions of that bottom, because especially a bloodworm is not going to swim like all that far. And you don't have like that many waves and stuff in winter. Like things aren't getting pushed around very much, right? And so unless you have like the little bottom composition, the mini ecosystem to hold bloodworms and to hold bugs or to hold whatever it is, that's what that bait is going to be. That's what that feed is going to be. So I really appreciate you reminding us, I guess, like to look at that composition, because that is a really great way to narrow down where to start. And because there's me fishing the rocks with a bloodworm, and I'm like, why is this not working? And it's like, because that's the time you should be using a minnow.
Right. Yeah, it's just little things like that that make a big difference, and we all get stuck on stupid, as I say. I'm the same way. You just worked in the past, and you're going to want it but what I learned is you can't force the bite. You can't force the fish to eat what you want them to eat, because they're going to eat what they want to eat, so you got to try and figure that out. But knowing a couple little things like the bottom composition, that might just help you learn what to start with, and you just experiment from there. And then sometimes, maybe just change color, or a lot of times it's just a color of that jig that sets them off differently. So sometimes it's a little bit of work. It's not like open water fishing. If the fish ain't there, I move on with the boat. It's pretty easy. I just keep moving. Ice fishing is a little different, because you got to work at it. You got to drill the holes. You have to sit there for a little bit and see what's going on, use your electronics or whatever you have. So it's a different aspect. Some people are really good at it and others aren't. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Dwayne has an interesting question, I guess, in relation to colors that we were just talking about. He says, why does orange, chartreuse, or pink work? Do they resemble something in the water? And actually, I'm going to share something that somebody told me once, is at least for the orange, that at least orange is kind of the color. If you have a fish that like eats another fish and then like spits it back up, it's kind of like an orangey dead color. And so especially late in ice season, fish are looking for like a really easy bite. And so if they find, I don't know, this is what, do you remember who told us this? Scott Brower.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. But just so especially late season, they're looking for that easy bite. And so if it's dead stuff, they're going to scarf it up. And that's what that orange represents to them. At least that's what I was told. So I always thought that was interesting.
yeah, and same with chartreuse. Chartreuse kind of, you know, if you think of and you don't think of, when you catch a perch, usually it's already kind of grown. It's got its adult colors, as they say. But when they're like fried, the size of a fry, they're more of a chartreusey color. They're more transparent. Same with a bluegill and things like that. And pink, in orange also. I mean, you look at a sunfish or bluegill. There's just about orange in just about every one of those bait fish that these fish eat on. And even crayfish, little bitty crayfish, micro crayfish, they'll be a red or a pink or an orange color when they molt and things like that too. So
Yeah,
that's one thing that I could attribute it to.
Yeah, well, and those, I think those colors also, especially in those fluorescent hues, are just trigger bites, right? You might just get reactions out of fish just because it's a bright flash. And something else people need to remember, especially with plastics, because a lot of times plastics are more translucent, and even if they're not, this still applies. But when you have different stains of water and when you have different depths of water, that color changes from the surface light going down. So what you're seeing as a pink or a chartreuse or an orange at the surface may not be that 15 feet down. I almost guarantee it's not that unless you have like 20-foot water clarity, and even then it's going to change it a little bit. And so those are just things that you have to experiment, and I think you really find out if those types of colors work in your body of water if you use them for a while. If you aren't successful, they're probably not going to work there, and you'd probably go towards natural. But sometimes, like, you just have a body of water that for some reason just this oddball bright color likes to work all the time. And like you said, it could be one of those fry things, or it just could be something just new and they just like want to eat it.
And again, like I said before, think of a fish as a 2-year-old. 2-year-olds is walking around your house all day long, and they pick something up. What do? They put it in your mouth because that's all they know is to eat at that point in time. Fish are the same way, and they think it's food until they know it's not food. And the only way for them to find out if it's food or not is to put it in their mouth, and if they quickly spit it out when they know it's not. But that's why you got to be quick with setting the hook. So, and that's what I tell people about bass fishing all the time. It's like, well, why would this work or why would that work? And you have to put yourself to a simple mind because the fish doesn't process things like we do. So to even try and figure that out, you just got to try and simplify things and know that their brains and the way they perceive things aren't how we perceive them.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually a really good point. I do always kind of forget that because I get stuck in like, what do I think about this bait? How do I think this looks? And it's like, that doesn't matter. It's just the fish will decide.
That's right. It really doesn't matter because in the water, anything that's in that water to them is food until they know it's not. So if they see something, you know, because we'll design baits and I never seen nothing like that in the water. Well, that doesn't matter what you've seen or how you perceive it. To the fish, it's food until they put it in their mouth, and once they realize it's not food, you already have the hook set. So,
it is funny how the color chartreuse always pops up. I feel like everyone fishes chartreuse.
Yeah.
I do have to ask, I guess, as far as ice fishing, do you fish still for bass? Do you fish or panfish? Because I was going to ask, do you have a favorite bait?
I don't have a favorite bait for ice fishing. I used to ice fish a lot when I was young. I don't ice fish as much as I do because it is so much work. I don't like driving out on the ice. I fell through the ice, I don't know, probably half a dozen times in my life. Some of it was on purpose to try and learn how to get out of it, but some of it was on an accident, and it's a scary feeling. So I don't go out as much as I did. But as far as baits and that, I don't have a favorite. I don't have a favorite color. But in the wintertime, I'm mostly targeting panfish or walleye or something like that. I don't typically try and catch bass in the wintertime.
Yeah. No, most people don't, but I just had to ask. You never know.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So
no, it's just fun to just go get out and fish.
Oh, yeah. So somebody who's coming to, let's say, the Ice Fishing Expo, and they have never started with plastics, ice or open water, are you going to have just ice plastics at the Ice Expo? Or are you going to have some open water there? Tell us more about that.
No, we'll pretty much have our full lineup at the ice show. I know it's an ice show, but we'll still display all the stuff that we have. So if people want to buy something for next spring, they can do that as well. So it'll be a pretty good mix. We'll have our normal line because I don't think just showing up with just the ice plastics, it doesn't take up much space. So we set up our racks that we have all our other products and stuff on. So.
Well, and it's so nice because being so close to Christmas, I know a lot of people are making their lists. And honestly, not everybody is an ice fisherman, and I don't know how to understand that. But I'm kidding. But a lot of people, Christmas lists, this is a great place to get stuff like that done. But let's say that you're the person and you don't know where to start. Is this a good booth to approach?
What you mean, to start fishing or?
Yeah, or if they don't know where to start with like plastics and baits, if they've only ever done maybe live bait before.
Well, plastics are pretty simple. Yeah, you just you get your little ice jig, you tip that hook with that plastic, and you just a live bait. Like, let's say you used a bloodworm set or a wax worm, you still got to jig that. You do the same thing with the plastic. You put it down and you let it you drop it down to the depth you want to fish, and you kind of jig it a little bit, see what happens. You wait, fish come around, and you try and find that tempo that they want, or the size they want, or the color they want. And it's pretty basic. There's not a lot of effort or a lot of thought that you have to put into using plastics. Start with I would start with the popular colors like chartreuse, orange, or pink. And I might even try black because a lot of insects are black, but that's going to again depend on your water, where you're at, and things like that. So it's pretty simple. Keep it simple. That's the best bet to start out. Just be simple with it and don't overthink it.
That's awesome. I think that is honestly really good advice. And be open-minded because like we said, have something, one or two things to switch to in case you don't get a bite. But ultimately cycling through and having that open mind is going to keep you confident enough to set that hook. Cool. So for the Ice Expo, we are looking a little bit at your website, and I think we posted the link in the comment section to begin with. And so if there is anybody at home, they're watching, they're looking to do some of their shopping. Well, I was going to say people can come to the Ice Expo, or they can otherwise buy it on your website now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the website's always up and running, obviously 24/7. We do got trying to think. I don't know what's all on there. You come to the show, and you can see it. You can pick it up. A lot of people they want to see it and pick it up and touch it and feel it before they purchase it. I understand that. With anything new, you just don't know. But we do have all that. But yeah, either way, whatever works for them, but you want to talk more about the product, come see us at the show. Otherwise, if you're already into fishing, you do a lot of it, and you know what works for you, yeah, check us out online. That's a simple approach.
Awesome. And then do you have like Facebook and social media as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We have Facebook, Instagram. We're on X, and I think we got a TikTok.
Awesome. I know that people are going to definitely be checking that out because you got a lot of cool stuff. And I keep looking over on our other screen because Josh has the website pulled up and he's been scrolling through, and so it's kind of fun. So people at home that have not checked that out, that is an awesome thing to do. And I appreciate so much that you were able to join us, even though you were on the road tonight.
Oh yeah, no, I got to text and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Thursday, or it's November 7th already. It's like, wow, where'd the
That's
time go?
honestly how I
Yeah,
That's how we
Yeah, and I got held up yesterday, you know, in my other day job. So yeah, I'm a day behind now. I should have been home already, but I'll be home tomorrow either way. So
Oh my goodness. Well, we feel lucky enough to be able to spend some time with you at the Ice Expo then. And we're really looking forward to bumping into you there.
all right, yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully we see a lot of people there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say too, is to the people at home, thank you guys for being here because you are always a big part of the fun. And otherwise, looking forward to seeing everyone on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.